Welcome back, everybody, to Constructive Uncoupling, a podcast devoted to amicable divorces. I'm Judy Weigel, your host and amicable divorce expert. Why? Because that's all I do, amicable divorces. Well, today we are going to talk with an amazing gentleman that I had the pleasure of meeting a couple weeks ago, Sidney Kanazawa. He's an attorney. We both belong to the Southern California Mediation Association, and he gave an amazing presentation that made me call him the next day and say, would you please be a guest on our podcast? Now, Sidney doesn't really work in family law, but overall, he is a civil attorney of enormously high-end cases. And we are talking about clients like the Port of Los Angeles, huge mega clients, oil companies, major seven-figure settlements. And I've never met anybody as kind and thoughtful, as an attorney nonetheless, as Sidney. So I invited him here, but there's a bonus that we get to have. Sidney works in children's family court, and so we're going to bring that into it. So part of the podcast, the episode, is going to be about his approach to mediation. And what I listened to the other day was his approach to mediation in civil cases. But he's going to also show how you can take his approach and put it in a divorce environment. And he did have some divorce law experience, a little bit of criminal, a little bit of divorce. Of course, criminals can be part of divorces, but that's a whole different issue, right, Sid? So, graduate of Gould Law School at USC, practicing 40 years. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So, mediation is a great option for conflict resolution, so much better than court because the parties get to craft a settlement that is uniquely theirs, but means that they have to be able to speak to one another, and they have to be willing to compromise, and you have to have a really good mediator. So I'm reading from your materials, and I want to start with this phrase so that you can share your approach to mediation. Here's the key phrase. Persuasion begins with listening and developing trust. Could you flesh that concept out more?
In today's very divisive world, we seem to be all shouting at each other, and nobody's changing their minds. When someone who is viewed as your opponent is shouting at you, it's no different than the opponent on a basketball team that's yelling at you and telling you what play you should be running. You're not going to be running whatever they tell you because they're the opposition, they're the enemy. And so the only way that you get people to change their minds is that you have to listen to them, and you have to try to view the world through their eyes. Thinking about dispute resolution as a sport or as war is very unhelpful, because in those contexts, people don't trust each other. And the way you gain trust is not to be a warrior against somebody else, but rather to be a friend, rather to be someone that they can identify with. Abraham Lincoln once said that the best way to destroy an enemy is to make him a friend. And that's the concept that I operate under.
I love that. And I've not heard that either. So now we go to divorce. And it's such a unique environment when you're going through a divorce because it's all about money, except for children, which there's a financial component to children. But it's all about money, yet you have these emotions that you have to deal with. You have a great deal of distrust that comes up. Somebody did the other person wrong. And so they bring these stories to you. How do you handle it? How do you equalize the playing field and get some level of trust and understanding going?
The only way that you can build trust is for people to feel that you are hearing them. When we're in conflict, it's like being in quicksand and everybody is sinking, everybody's feeling very powerless. And the only way to get people to start to think rationally is to help them feel stable, to put a board under their feet and basically make them feel like they're not sinking and that they can start thinking about the other person. It takes empathy. And to build empathy, you don't threaten and attack somebody or yell at somebody. You have to listen to them and show them that you heard what they said.
We're not therapists, we're mediators. So as mediators, how do we show the two parties how to build trust, how to empathize?
I don't think that you really show them how to do that. You just do it. And
so the mediator starts.
Yes, and I think that one of the ways, the simplest way, is just simply to not talk and just listen and acknowledge what the person is telling you and feed back to them exactly what they are saying to you, not with any judgment, but rather just as someone listening to what they're saying and trying to understand, earnestly trying to understand what they're saying. But another way that I've found is very effective is using a whiteboard. I learned about this in a couple of instances that were unique, but I found that it's amazing that when you write things down on the whiteboard, using the words of the person speaking, you show them that you have heard what they said. It doesn't necessarily mean that you agree with them, but at least you've heard them. And I've had many instances where it's turned around angry crowds just by writing down what they said.
Didn't you tell us a story 2 weeks ago at the seminar about a very angry group of people? There was an accident. Was this the port story? Mm-hmm. And somebody started writing. Am I remembering this right?
Yes. I was in charge of the largest oil spill in the port of Los Angeles. I represented a foreign shipping company. And we were setting up a way in which to manage all the claims that came about as a result of the spill. The spill covered the entire harbors, contaminated 7 miles of shoreline, and shut the port for 5 days. My claims person was trying to explain the process, and everybody was shouting him down. So I stepped up to the podium, and the next person that yelled at me, I asked them, what do you think we should be doing now that we're not doing already? And they said something, and a lot of it was about communication, a lot of it was about logistics, a lot of it was about how we should look at the damage that is out there. And one of my guys was behind me, and we had this big whiteboard behind me that we were using for cleanup operations, diagramming the port and how we're going to clean up the oil in the port. And he just wrote down what the person said. And the next person that yelled at me, I asked him the same thing. What do you think we should be doing now that we're not doing already? And again, my guy wrote it down on the board, and pretty soon we filled up the whole board. And then a guy in the back of the crowd stood up and says, "You don't give a damn about any of this. Where's my money?" And this woman that was sitting in the front row, that prior to the meeting was organizing all the people to bring a mass litigation action against my client, and was getting everybody's phone numbers and contact information and things like that. One of those people, she was a lady in the front row, she stood up, turned to the back of the crowd and said, "Sit down and shut up. These guys are trying to help." And that group of people that were organizing against us and were angry about us and all that,
right,
they turned around and became our most loyal supporters and helped us to settle 600 of the 2,000 claims within 2 weeks of the spill, and all 2,000 claims within 3 months of the spill. And it was because, thinking about it later, I didn't realize what had happened at the time. But thinking about it later, I realized that what had happened was the whole crowd that was really angry at us turned around because they could see by our writing what they said on the whiteboard that we were listening, and we didn't necessarily agree with everything that we were writing on the board, but as a first step, we were listening, and they were willing to support us because we were listening, not telling.
I love that story. And do you realize that that is a facilitative form of mediation? It's called large group facilitation. I started doing it when I worked for the city attorney's office. I didn't work when I was mediating for the city attorney's office in the dispute resolution program, and they specialized in community mediations. Some very difficult ones. I presided over a murder, an unfortunate murder. A policeman shot somebody in the Rampart Westlake district because communication, they weren't speaking the same language. And the policeman thought the gentleman had a weapon, so he pulled his, shot him. We did a mediation with a variety of different languages in the room, but we did the board and we wrote everything, and others would translate for those who weren't understanding, and it was the warmest feeling in the room.
Mm-hmm. It really has a remarkable effect, and I've done it repeatedly in a lot of different contexts, in very major crisis situations, as well as in union strikes and very heated negotiations with attorneys in a lot of different contexts. And it's an amazing thing that if you can show people that you are listening, it makes all the difference in the world. And people's attitude changes when you can show that you are listening and when you're earnest about it. I mean, you can't fake this. It is something that you have to be sincere about. And when you're sincere and you're listening, it's amazing what you can learn and also how you can change the attitude of the other person.
Because what we don't get in normal life is the space and quiet to share our thoughts, do we? It's not normal. Mm-hmm. We interrupt each other.
Yeah, most of the time when we have a conversation, we're not really listening to the other person. We're waiting for a break in the conversation to say what we want to say. And so we're not absorbing what the other person is saying. We're just waiting for the person to finish so that we can say what we want to say. So it's usually two people who are talking at the other person rather than listening to the other person.
And that's so prevalent in divorce mediation. First of all, when you're going through divorce, you feel completely out of control. If it's your first divorce, you have no idea where your feelings should go. And there's a lot of them, and there's a lot of decisions to make. When I have been fortunate enough in divorce mediations with the right people to have quiet, and each person just talks and heartfelt and gets things out that they never had the opportunity to say because the other person would interrupt, they get to completely show you what their thoughts and feelings are, right? And then their own words come back to them, which they're never allowed to hear because it is the battle of words.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's amazing that we don't actually hear what we say a lot of times. And so we're saying things and everybody is reacting to what we're saying, but we're not hearing what we're saying. We're not seeing what other people are seeing in us. I'm from Hawaii, and in Hawaii there is a traditional system of dispute resolution called ho'oponopono. And it's done in the ohana, or the family, and family is a extended meaning in Hawaii. But basically, one of the rules of ho'oponopono is that everybody talks about how they contributed to the problem. You don't talk about somebody else. You don't point fingers at somebody else and say, you did this or you did that. You only talk about how you contributed. And so oftentimes the dispute is between two members of the family and not a third. And the third person might say, I saw that they were having problems and they were angry at each other, but I didn't do anything. I didn't talk to any of them. I didn't step up or try to listen to what they had to say. And that's all they would say. They wouldn't say this person was right or that person was wrong or anything like that. It is simply you contributing how you contributed to the problem, and it sort of gets everybody involved as being both a contributor to both the problem and to the solution.
Okay, completely amazing. On several of the other podcast episodes, I talk about the only way to get to resolution is to take a step back and look at your level of responsibility in the relationship. And when you can, from my point of view, when you could start looking at your level of responsibility, you're right. You can start seeing where the solution would be and sharing that. And when people start sharing solution ideas rather than culpability ideas, now you can get somewhere.
Yeah, because I think that the basic concept behind that is that we cannot change the past. Whatever happened, happened. It's over. And so we can both sit here and interpret what happened in the past. We can both recollect differently what happened in the past. We can judge what happened differently in the past. But all of those things cannot be resolved because basically it already happened. It's done. It's over. We can't change any of it, regardless of how we interpret it or how we characterize it. The only thing that we can change is what happens now and in the future. And the idea of focusing on now and the future is about solutions, not about what happened, not about blame, things in the past. It's about what can we do about all of that today and tomorrow. And so the past is informative only in terms of understanding how we got here. But the only real question to the parties is where do we go from here?
So somebody who can't let go of the past, as a mediator, how would you deal with that at the mediation table?
I think I can only help them to think in the present and the future, and to think in terms of what is the current situation and how can we make it better for the future. The relationship that is damaged in the past is over. And the only question is, what kind of a relationship do we want to develop from this point going forward? That's really the only issue that we can discuss and we can brainstorm about and solve. We can't do anything about what happened before. Whether someone was right or wrong or stupid or smart or whatever it might be, it's done, it's over. And so helping people to focus on what can be changed, I think may be difficult initially, but once they start thinking in that mindset, it is such a relief, because to hang on to the anger, to hang on to the resentment, to hang on to all of those feelings of the past locks you into the past. And the person that suffers the most is the person that can't let go. The other people that move on, they're not bothered by it. They're moving on. They're living in the present and the future and developing new relationships and new scenarios for themselves going forward. It's the person that is hanging on so tight to this past that is suffering. And it's unfortunate because oftentimes it's the victim that is suffering the most because they're hanging on to this past and the injustices of the past and don't realize they can get rid of that injustice by focusing on the present and future.
And they can do it anytime they want.
That's right.
So let's transition, nice transition point, to what you are currently doing in the world of family dynamics, different from your practice during the day, and that is your involvement with Children's Court. Could you please explain what Children's Court is first?
Children's Court is where the children are at risk of some kind of harm. It might be emotional, might be physical, might be drug-related, whatever it is. But the court's responsibility is to take care of the children, to make sure they're safe. And so the Department of Family Services oftentimes is initiates the proceedings, and basically is taking the children from one parent or the other, or taking the children and putting them with another relative or a foster care home or something. But basically, the department views there's some danger in the household that requires them to take the children away. The family court then tries to figure out how to reunify the family if they can, how to give the parents the appropriate parenting classes, drug rehabilitation, anger management classes, or whatever it takes to try to get the family back together again. And oftentimes, the family is a separated family anyway. It is a mother and a father who may be in different relationships. They may be a mother and a father that are unmarried and not together anymore. And so what we do in the Southern California Family Mediation Program is that we help these mothers and fathers negotiate with each other and mediate with each other to find a solution for the future, find a way in which they can share parenting rights over the children going into the future, how they can work together. And oftentimes these parents don't trust each other, don't like each other.
Do you find sometimes they may not know each other very well?
Yeah.
Because bearing a child may just have been an issue of a very short term.
It could be, and oftentimes it's complicated by them having separate families at the same time. And so it is a very difficult environment. But we get 95% success rate in getting the parents to agree on a plan going forward. And one of the ways that we get that high success rate is that we just simply listen to people and help them to articulate what is on their mind and help them to hear what the other parent is saying.
Do you find resistance at first? Is this one of the most severe environments you could be mediating in a family law situation?
It is a difficult environment. I mean, people are often angry at each other. People are often, wanting to harm the other parent. And
are there aspects of violence? Domestic violence?
Oftentimes violence is the underlying reason for this
that's
situation.
Right, of course, yeah.
And so drugs and infidelity. There's a whole bunch of things that can lead people into this court. And but the court and all the people involved are attempting to create a new relationship going forward, because the parent will always be the parent of the child. They have this relationship that is forever, and the only question is whether it's going to be a functional relationship or a non-functional relationship. That's really the only issue. And so what we try to do is help the parents figure out how to make it as functional as possible going forward.
Okay, so there's an interesting part of this that's required, and that is the responsibility of the parents to the child. It's a requirement. You don't get to say, my mistake, didn't mean to conceive, gotta go now, right? They have to be responsible to the rearing of the child. So what do you do when you have somebody that really doesn't want to be there? Well, I'll let you answer that first. That really doesn't want to be there, is forced to be there.
We don't see exactly that kind of situation.
No.
Because mediation is voluntary. It is neutral.
Okay.
And it is confidential.
Okay.
And so as a result, if the parties don't want to be there,
you won't see them. They won't be there.
They won't be there.
They'll be somewhere else. They'll be in court.
You can't force people to agree. And that's not what we do in mediation. In mediation, we are in the process of helping people negotiate to get some kind of an agreement going forward.
Sid, what do you do when one of the parents is a drug addict? I just recorded an episode about co-parenting with a drug addict this morning.
Well, by the time we see them in mediation, usually they've gone through some kind of a drug rehabilitation program. And so there are other programs that have addressed the drug problem, and so they are somewhat aware of the situation. They're not a completely different person, but
Right.
basically they are aware enough that we have to take that into account. And so the court usually gives us guidance in terms of how far we can go in this mediation. And sometimes the parent at that stage will have to be supervised in terms of their visitation. And
That's what I was going to ask you to get into as well. So do you do step-up plans that go from monitored visitation to on your own?
yes, and those are, I think, almost all of the cases that I've seen. It's amazing when you listen to people. The empathy and sympathy that they have for another comes out, and it's because they don't feel like they have to be shouting against somebody who's not listening. When somebody's listening,
And they're not in protection mode or protective mode.
yeah, they're not protecting themselves either. And I've seen parents amazingly turn around and be so concerned about the other parent's situation, job situation, emotional situation, all kinds of things, and in the drug rehabilitation type of situations and all that, I've seen parents that have gone out of the way to create step-up programs that allow the parent with the drug problem to show that they're ready to take more responsibility in the arrangement and all that. And almost in all cases, the other parent, they got into this relationship for some reason, and by and large, they usually have some kind of a heart that allowed them to get together, and that heart starts coming out again, and they're trying to find ways in which the other parent can find their path again and can take more responsibility, and they work out some kind of a plan.
I feel very lucky that I have been part of mediations where that dynamic existed, where people listened to one another with the intention of understanding, and you could just feel the dynamic melt from the time they came in to after they listened, and now they're actually working together to create something that suits them and their family. And I have so much gratitude when that happens. I wish it was every single time. But sitting here listening to you, I would want you to be my mediator. If I needed mediation, and I have in the past needed mediation, not in divorce, but still I've needed it. I feel safe with you. I feel that you really do have the greatest good of mankind in your heart and in your soul. And you want this for people.
You're too kind.
Well, you are kinder.
I think how you view there's this principle of reciprocity that, and it's in every single religion. Do unto others as you want them to do unto you, and but it's a reality of human nature that if you assume that the other person is going to be difficult and evil, or whatever characterization you place on it, they will be. And if you assume that they are, that there's some good in them, they will be. I mean, it's one of those things where you cannot find the good in somebody if you only focus on the bad.
Yes.
And so it's only by allowing the good to come out, by looking for it, that we can sort of work together with other people. Because, the other side of it is a defensive mechanism. It is a hostile reaction. And it all stems from fear. It all stems from protecting yourself because of fear that the other person is going to do some harm to you. And so in order to engage people to work out agreements, you have to find a way to help them to diminish that fear so that they can open up. I'll tell you one last story that we're in the NBA championship era. I mean, we just finished the NBA championships. And Jerry Buss, when he owned the Lakers went to the finals almost every single year. And he amassed 10 championships. 10 NBA championships in the time that he was the owner and ran the Lakers. That's an incredible achievement. And I gained some insight into how he did that when I heard his business partner talking at his funeral. And his business partner talked about how Jerry Buss did business. And Jerry Buss would look at a deal from all sides. And if he thought it was fair to all sides, he'd do the deal. But if he didn't think it was fair to all sides, he wouldn't do the deal. And the business partner told this story about how he had agreed to a deal, and after the fact thought about the deal and thought it was unfair to one of the parties. So he threw in a couple of extra players to make it fair. That's after the deal had already been made. Now, if you think about it, how would you feel going into a negotiation with Jerry Buss as opposed to going into a negotiation with someone that has a more win-lose type of an attitude, that I got to win, you got to lose type of an attitude, or somebody who is trying to create all kinds of leverage against you.
Yes.
You're going to have a very different attitude, and a very different attitude about how much you're going to expose, how much you're going to signal that there are ways in which we can do business and we can meet each other's needs and all that. And so when you're doing business with somebody that is being very aggressive and hostile, you tend to limit the options because people are trying to be very protective and they don't want to show you what are the possibilities because they think that you'll take advantage of them, and they think that they will be hurt and weakened by exposing things to you. Whereas if you deal with somebody who is more open, you feel like they're not going to take your pocketbook, and so you can be more relaxed about the agreements and working out agreements that make sense to everybody. Yeah.
Creative, solid, and yes, good for all. I really thank you for coming here. I know you have an enormously busy schedule, so I sincerely appreciate this, as does the audience, I'm sure. If somebody wanted to get in touch with you, I do have a divorce audience, but would you like to give your information out?
Sure. I don't know how to give the information in a podcast.
Email address? Yeah. Or let's just say who you work for. How's that?
I work for a firm called McGuire Woods, and it's
in Los Angeles.
In Los Angeles.
So if you would like Sidney Kanazawa to mediate for you, and you're having a divorce, would you be open to that?
Sure.
Excellent. Thank you, Sidney. And thank all of you for listening. I appreciate each and every one of you, and we will be back with our next podcast soon. This is Judy Weigel, your host for Constructive Uncoupling, and you can always get in touch with me at my email address, Judy at divorceresourceinc.com. Judy, Judy, at divorceresourceinc.com. Thank you so much for listening.